All right.
Welcome to Soil for Climate. This is Hart Hagen. I'm here with Kathleen Hallal. How are you doing, Kathleen?
Very well, thanks. How about you, Hart?
Great. So we're going to talk about how to make our communities safer and less toxic. Kathleen is a parent and a passionate advocate for non-toxic. She's co-founder of Non-Toxic Communities, from which she has stepped down, except as an advisor, and is now pursuing a business as an entrepreneur with non-toxic herbicide. So we're going to talk about, so Kathleen, tell us a little bit about your story. You have three boys and there were health issues, and you looked into it and decided that the health issues were being caused in large measure by toxins in our food. And you've been persuading your community and others to get out of the business of putting glyphosate and 2,4-D on everything. So tell us your story.
Yeah, that's right. I have three boys. My husband and I have three boys.
Mhm.
And when they were young, they had autoimmune issues. And so as part of their recovery process, we had all kinds of doctors and therapists who helped us. But as part of the process of healing them, I looked into their diet and I wanted to clean up their diet and give them the very best foods I could in order to help them to heal. And I ended up talking to farmers. I started talking to farmers, scientists, pediatricians, vets, everyone I could talk to who were experts in this field. And I found out that the pesticide products that were being used and the fertilizers that were being used commonly on crops were actually pretty dangerous. And I discovered it'd be a really good idea to eliminate those from our pantry. The biggest one was glyphosate, but there are also other products, glufosinate, atrazine, all kinds of other herbicides that they use on potatoes and other crops. And then I found out that the fertilizers that are commonly used are created a lot of times using ingredients known as toxic sludge, which is like basically derived from what comes straight out of our sewage plants. So it could include chemicals from the hospital, chemotherapy. It could include products from the auto body shop around the corner. Also, everyone's drugs, whatever our neighbors are taking or whatever they dump down the drain. And that's all put right onto conventional crops and GM crops. And I thought that's not healthy. So when I found out about all those things that they were using out there in our fields, I changed our family's diet. We eventually went 100% organic and our children's health improved. So I decided to go out and help communities to clean up what they're using too. Once I noticed around my kids' school, I could pick up, there'd be these yellow signs that would say, warning. And it would say that they were applying or had applied like Roundup Supermax and all these products. And it just occurred to me that those were all the same products that the farmers had warned me about that are being used out in the field on our crops and that are doing harm to the farm animals and destroying the soil biology and so on. So I kind of started a campaign to have our schools stop using those products, and then our city followed suit. I got a group together and our city followed suit, and we eliminated those products in our parks too. And after that, I worked with my partner, Diana Carpinone, to really develop non-toxic communities. She's based in New Hampshire and I'm here on the West Coast. And my city is Irvine, California, which has had an organics first policy for over 6 years now. And it's going really well. Like all of our parks have, organically maintained signs on them when you enter, and it just feels really good to see like families with young kids and dogs running around and knowing that our parks are clean and safe. So I just decided to try and help other communities to do these things. And we work very closely with Beyond Pesticides, a wonderful organization based in Washington, D.C. And then Diana and I got our certification in organic landscaping from NOFA, Northeast Organic Farming Association and their landscape division. We got accredited so that we could understand the principles and understand how converting to organic methods can work, and to meet the people who've been successful using these practices for decades, because it's kind of a secret that you can, successfully have a beautiful landscape using organic methods. Everyone's taught that you have to use these chemicals, and it's just a myth.
So when I think of having a non-toxic methods, I think of nutrition and environment. Those are two of the main, categories of things we think about. There's human health, and then there's what's happening to the environment. Let's come back to human health pretty soon, but you were really the first person who got me clued into the fact that soil health is important. So this is soil for climate. And it wasn't that long ago that I just didn't understand what the soil does. Soil should be treated as a living organism, because underneath the ground, there is an ecosystem, and that ecosystem delivers nutrients to our food. And many of the conventional industrial farming methods just kind of destroy that soil biology. Am I on the right track with that?
That's exactly right. I mean, in the soil, we have so many microorganisms. We've got fungi, bacteria, all kinds of critters that work symbiotically with the roots of the plants, and they work with each other, and they talk to each other. They're all connected, and that life under the soil is what makes the soil be alive. And I always think to myself that, what if every park and every schoolyard across America were organically maintained, so that the soil is thriving in the microbial life, and then all of that soil, all of those plants and all that soil can absorb excess carbon. It's like a big sponge. So that's a lot of territory if we could get all of that going in an organic, manner. And also our crops. There are scientists who say that if we just heal the soil all across the Midwest,
Mhm.
and bring back the health of the soil, it could all absorb all of the excess carbon on the planet for
Mhm.
everyone, just our
Right.
Great Plains. And there is some debate around this, but there is that only healing the Midwest could heal the whole planet. However, there's no debate that that's what happens when you heal the soil, that it increases carbon absorption, goes into the plants are healthier, the soil is healthier, we are healthier. And in the end, there's a real problem with our soil, with the nutrition and healthy bacteria having been depleted. Our crops are not as nutritious as they were in the 50s, say. We've used these terrible chemicals for years and years and years that seem to be like a great way to increase yields and make life easier for farmers. And that may have been true in the beginning, but now we're dealing with, excess health problems in the plants, in the soil, fungi, mycotoxins, dastardly bacteria that makes the plants weak, and the plants can't stand up to, weather events as well, like the GM crops. From what I've heard from my farmer friends, they don't stand up very well to wind, rain, hail. They lay down much more quickly than conventional crops. And these are problems that we really have to think about, because as the climate changes on the planet, we need to have crops that are very resilient to drought, to weather events, to wind. And all of it works together symbiotically. We can't think about crops, one part at a time. Everything needs to be looked at holistically, and we need to look at everything from the bacteria in the soil, the good health of the soil, to the good health of the plants, to the good health of the farm animals, to the good health of the humans. It's all connected, and we're all suffering from having lowered levels of healthy bacteria, and we're missing that balance in the soil that keeps the bad bacteria and the bad fungi in check. So we need that natural balance to come back, to support nature, to support our health, our own health, to support the crops, to support everything, the animals, everything.
So when you say it's all connected, you're suggesting that everything is a system, that the soil, it has an ecosystem, that ecosystem is connected to the plants, which are connected to any animals or humans that eat the plants. So when we till and when we use synthetic fertilizers and when we use toxic herbicides and insecticides, for one thing, that kills the soil biology. And so what else happens when we use all these toxic chemicals and we don't respect the biological systems that we inherited?
Well, it's really actually terrible. It creates a lot of compaction. It creates hard dirt, just dirt. There's no nutrition left in it that can't really support crops very well. These crops that are being planted in fields where the nutrients are depleted from the soil, then you have to put more inputs like nitrogen and maybe more chemical fertilizer inputs. And then you can put some of the fertilizer that has a toxic sludge in it. And, you know, these farmers have to make all these inputs to build the soil back up just to grow a crop. And the ground becomes very hard and dry. It blows away. You remember the history of the Dust Bowl. You create conditions for that. There's runoff. Our topsoil is almost gone. We only have 60 harvests left, which is really a problem. I mean, in the Midwest, we had such great topsoil because of the bison and the, you know, life cycles going on over years and years. And we developed an amazing topsoil that we used in the US for crops, but we're using that up and it's disappearing. It's depleting our soil. So between, you know, runoff and, you know, combined with unhealthy soil, bad weather conditions, we're losing our topsoil, and no topsoil, no crop, no
Mhm.
food. I mean,
Right.
it's a major issue. We
And
really need to focus on this, and people are, but I just wonder if it's happening fast enough.
oh yeah, right. Yeah, so the issue of farm profitability comes to mind for me in a couple of different areas. One is that year after year after year, you can either degrade the value of your asset. How many acres? No matter how many acres you have, it could be 5 acres, 100 acres, 1,000 acres, or more. Each year, you're using these conventional farming methods. You're degrading the value of your asset. You're losing topsoil. Your soil is losing carbon. The soils of North America had approximately 6 to 8% soil carbon originally. Now they're down to about 1 to 2%. So year after year after year, are you going to continue to degrade your asset, or are you going to build the value of your asset? Because the more you build soil carbon, carbon is only kind of one nutrient or one component of healthy soil, but it's a strong indicator that things are going right. And so, you know, we should be working hard to build the soil carbon back up to that 6 to 8% level. And we can be doing that. We can do that on the first top foot of the soil, or we can go down. The only limit on the only limit on the depth of soil that can hold carbon is the roots, because it's the roots that are putting that carbon into the soil. So we could be helping farmers understand how they can be more profitable by, well, by building the value of their asset. And year by year by year, you're shelling out a whole lot less money for inputs such as synthetic fertilizers, insecticides, herbicides, and patented seeds and equipment. So,
That's right. And the other part of that is the healthier your soil is, the deeper the roots will grow. And the deeper roots you have, the less water you need and the stronger the crops are in terms of standing up against weather conditions. You want the deepest possible root system. So the other part of that that just came into my mind was there's this movement for people not to eat meat,
mm,
which is okay with me if that's your choice.
yeah.
That's fine. However, the Great Plains were built because of the bison, and those kinds of animals are a part of building back the soil. And this movement to eat, you know, artificial meat, I forgot what they call it, Beyond Meat, is that it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Meat.
That's
And there's another
mhm.
one.
Impossible foods,
Yeah, and I think
impossible burgers.
Bill Gates is pushing this as
hmm
a way to save the planet, but
Yeah.
that's a giant lie
Yeah, it is.
because that's all based on GM crops, GM soy, which has all the chemical inputs, keeps destroying the soil, has to be trucked and transported and processed into the fake meat. It's a complete loser, in my opinion. I would never buy it. I don't think it's particularly healthy. And, if you choose not to eat meat, that's one thing. But I personally think a little bit of meat in moderation is actually a healthy part of caring for the planet. We need that cycle to go on, and we need to look at things in a reasonable manner. And the health, the nutrition that you'll receive from grass-fed beef, I'm sure the synthetic stuff can't even compare.
Mhm.
So it frustrates me that they market it as a way to save the planet when the opposite is true. That
Yeah.
really it speeds up this destruction of the soil.
Well, let's talk more about that. So my thing is climate. I've been reporting on climate for a good solid 3.5 years. For the first couple of years, I kind of bought into the orthodoxy. Now I'm very much off the beaten path. With regard to that, and to me, one of the biggest lies is there are a lot of lies surrounding renewable energy and things like that. And there are a lot of lies, to think that you have to be a vegan to be good to the planet, that a plant-based diet is somehow good. My starting point in that inquiry is when Joel Salatin said, all ecosystems have animals. So if you want an ecological food system, then that food system is going to involve animals. And if, as you say, the impossible foods and the so-called plant-based meats and fake meats, if they're based on genetically modified foods, then like genetically modified corn, et cetera, extremely processed, contrived, then I mean, genetically modified corn and soy are just a disaster ecologically, as opposed to what? If we move to a more regenerative model for agriculture, then you're going to have biologically diverse farms. Biologically diverse means you have multiple kinds of livestock. Maybe you have cattle and chickens, and maybe you have other types of mammals and birds. And you're going to have many different kinds of crops. You're going to have some of your production coming from trees, and the trees are part of an ecosystem. And all along, you're building that soil. So you have a biologically diverse. I don't think you can have a climate smart food system if it's all monocultures, especially if it's genetically modified, and if you're drenching everything with glyphosate, et cetera, and lots of tillage. I mean, I call it climate. It's supposed to be climate smart. It's climate stupid is what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And it frustrates me. I'm totally fine with someone choosing to be vegan or vegetarian if that's what they want to do, but then get a black bean burger or a burger that's made of garbanzo beans. Uh, don't buy that synthetic fake meat product because that's ripping the planet apart. And
Mhm.
I feel sorry for people who buy it, who think they're doing something good for the planet. And the best thing they could do is get a black bean burger that's raised by a responsible farmer who took care of the soil. And
Mhm.
maybe it was even raised locally. I think that it's okay if we have some people who eat meat and some people who don't, because as far as I've studied in terms of these systems, animals are an important part of it, and they actually can help farmers create, healthier crops and also add flavor. I was struck one time, I can't remember where I heard it, but it was a farmer who rotated chickens and goats through his cherry tree groves. And the cherries had amazing flavor because of
Mm.
the way he rotated the animals and the certain inputs that the animals, waste added to the soil that gave the cherries extra flavor. It all worked together. And, that's okay with me. Everything in moderation, but no feedlots, no cruel CAFOs,
Mhm.
none of that. In an ideal world, we would all eat far less meat, be kind to our animals, and respect the soil. And the UN even came out with a study that said organic farming is the way we should move forward. And organic farming actually produces higher yields than GM farming. All these myths are out there about GMOs, being a product to feed the world. And I think everybody realizes now that wasn't really the truth. That was more like a sales pitch. And it's kind of the same thing with Impossible Burgers and Beyond Meat. It's not that healthy. So everything in
Well,
moderation.
yeah, let's talk about those cherries that are more flavorful. So that relates to what I was saying about a biologically diverse farm. In a biologically diverse farm, you have nutrients cycling, you have carbon cycling, you have healthy soils. So you're establishing good water cycles. And the plants and the animals are exchanging nutrients for one another. And like, you have your pollinators that are going to exchange nutrients between plants. And if you have a healthy soil ecosystem, you have all these, worms, grubs, pill bugs, you have these microscopic organisms. Nematodes are this whole big thing in my world. It's like these microscopic worms. There are about 5 different ones, depending on whether they eat bacteria or whether they eat fungi or whether they eat each other, or whether they are omnivores and they eat fungi and each other, so in a microscope. But anyway, the monocultures don't respect the need for nutrient cycling. They don't respect the need to build water cycles. They don't respect the need to build healthy soils. They don't contemplate that we could be storing a lot of carbon in our soils if we were, which is completely foreign to a GMO monoculture, heavy tillage type of situation.
Right. And the other problem with the monoculture is that you're not encouraging diversity. And the more diversity you have, the more strength you have to fight off disease.
Exactly.
So these plants in these fields, these GMO, corn crops, they have illness like Goss's wilt and all these other problems that farmers have to deal with. And a lot of the time, the fix is another chemical. So
Yeah, right.
you just get on this treadmill, you can't get off it. Whereas if you had healthy soil and healthy plants, you would have a lot less fungus and a lot less disease to deal with. And there are natural solutions that, you can, if you put your thinking cap on, you can stop going to the store and buying XYZ product to spray to solve your problem. And you could say, hey, why do I have this problem in the first place? Let's fix the source of the problem and make the problem go away that way, instead of just treating the symptoms, which is, same as our medical model. Our medical model in this country, especially, is to treat the symptoms. And the best way to heal, and the way we healed our kids, was to find out what the source of the condition was and treat that. And it's the same with the plants. You have to get down to the ground level and below the ground and say, let's get an analysis of all this in the lab and see what our balance is like and see what nutrients we can add to the soil to bring things back into balance. And, you do that in a lot of ways. You can either, have inputs where you put calcium or gypsum or whatever over the dirt, or there are new companies that are working with soil probiotics that can actually eat up glyphosate. It can reverse glyphosate that's been in the soil for 20 years in about 6 months. And these bacteria can also eat oil and gas and other things that spill in the soil, so you can clean it up. And then when you feed it, the good bacteria comes back and you create that life. It's just like us kind of taking vitamins, right? So, but the first step is to get a hold of someone who knows about this stuff, test the soil and bring the balance back. And also rotate crops, different cover crops. Different crops will feed the soil or contribute different things to the soil. So you want to always be changing those instead of always having the same crop that pulls the same things out of the soil. And then you put chemical inputs and your soil's just dead after a while. And you wonder why. It's because there's not enough variety. It's the same in our bodies, right? We don't want to always be eating the same thing. They say eat a rainbow. So you want to eat a variety of things. Why? Because we have a variety of bacteria and a variety of things in our body that need to be supportive. So it's the same for the soil as it is for us. And we should all be cognizant of that. And I hope that soon one day more and more people become aware of that and understand that variety brings health.
Mhm. So let's talk a little bit about nutrition. And one of the fascinating things to me is that the soil, like you're saying, there's a microbiome in the soil. The soil is an ecosystem. It includes a lot of microbes, and whatever you do to that soil ecosystem ends up being reflected in the plants, and that ends up being reflected in us. Whether it's maybe toxins are flowing from the soil to the plants to us, soil to plants to animals to us, and or maybe it's nutrients. So and one fascinating thing I heard, this was from John Kempf, who said that the soil, the plants kind of outsource their digestive system. So the plants, work with the soil microorganisms to digest and deliver the food that they need, in the same way that our stomachs kind of have that microbiome on the inside. And so, is there a connection between the toxicity and or the nutrients in the soil, and does that have a ripple effect through the plants that we eat?
Absolutely. I mean, if you think of herbicides like, glyphosate, the active ingredient in Roundup, which is everywhere, um, yeah, that's a chelator. It used to, it was originally used to clean out pipes because it grabs minerals, right? To chelate means to claw, so it grabs minerals. And it does that in everything it touches. So it does that in the plant it's attached to, and then when it goes down through the roots into the soil, it gloms onto the minerals. And it does the same thing when we eat it. It gloms onto our minerals and it denies us nutrition, and it can actually pull minerals out of our body,
Mm,
just like it did in the pipes. So it's the opposite of feeding us. And the problem is that you can test an environment that has glyphosate in it for the presence of minerals, or you can test the food for the presence of minerals. But those minerals, while they're there, have been chelated by the glyphosate. So they're sitting there, but they're not bioavailable for us. They're not
mm,
bioavailable for the plants, and they're not bioavailable for us. So while you could test and you could
mm,
say, oh, those minerals are present,
mm.
you're not getting them. You're not having that benefit. So that's a really very dangerous thing. So in our family, we supplement with vitamins and minerals, and that's a big reason why, because
Mhm.
it's not in our food.
So you're saying that glyphosate is a chelator, which it means it binds to metals. The metals that we need as nutrients include iron and zinc and what else?
Yeah, we just need things. Oh my gosh, you're gonna,
Oh,
I'm not gonna pass
yeah,
this
don't worry.
quiz. I have a farmer friend who can
Yeah,
rattle out every single metal that glyphosate
yeah,
binds to. And I'm
right,
sorry, I'm just gonna say
right.
right now, I don't know, but all
Sure.
kinds of metals that are necessary for our bodies to function. Another scientist I know, he's so wonderful. He says the minerals are the keys to our engine.
Mm,
And when glyphosate grabs onto those, our engine can't work. Full stop. Like it will break us down like a car. We will break down without those essential minerals. And glyphosate robs us of those. There are like 11 or 12, and I'm really sorry, I don't have them memorized.
oh,
All
no,
I
don't worry about that.
remember is they're the essential minerals.
Sure.
And so we need to supplement and we need to avoid glyphosate because it denies our body those nutrients, and it
Well, let-
denies the animals we eat. If you're a meat eater, your meat's not going to have it.
yeah.
Or if you're, eating plants, those plants will be deficient in those minerals. So it's all the way up the chain.
So just because a test shows that a mineral or a nutrient is in soil doesn't, yeah, it's there, but it's not bioavailable. It's like locked in a safe. It's there, but you can't get to it.
That's right. That's right.
So we're going to wrap up in just a few minutes. This is a wonderful, informative conversation, and I guarantee you, I will be interested in revisiting these issues, and so will our audience. Why don't you tell us a few things about what we can do to make our families healthier? And you can talk about nutrition and food choices. You can talk about, um, you know, how to make our communities more toxin free, that kind of thing?
Well, in terms of food choices, it's like I always say, try to know your farmer.
Hmm.
First rule of thumb, buy organic. And, people will say to me, well, organic costs more, but in the end, in terms of your overall family budget,
Hmm.
you're going to save money on the medical end.
Hmm.
So you just pick, there's that expression, pay your farmer or pay the pharmacy later, your choice.
Hmm.
So, we and our family stopped going out as often as we used to.
Hmm.
We don't go to restaurants as often because most of them are cooking with GM oil, and I don't know where they're getting their meat or their food that they're serving me. So we cut way back on our restaurant like date nights, and we cook a lot more at home. So we dedicated more money to the grocery budget. We go to the farmers market. I try to know my farmers wherever possible. And I'm especially excited when I meet farmers who understand all this about the soil and the soil biology, who are conscious of it, because their food's going to have the highest nutrition. But in terms of affordability, even Walmart has organic products, Costco has organic products, you can find them most everywhere. Try to know your farmer is what I always recommend. You'll have higher nutrition. And then also be careful about the quality of your vitamins. It's better to pay a little more for vitamins and try and find responsible sources. And we could go into that one time when we visit,
Sure.
but try and find reputable sources for your vitamins. And the other thing is clean up your community. I've been an activist for years, and go to your city council or your school board, get a group together and say, hey, we really prefer if you didn't use products like glyphosate or glufosinate. And if you used organic landscaping products, how can we make this happen? If you reach out to non-toxic communities, we have everything posted there, all the tools you might need. We will help you with consultation. Beyond Pesticides has all the science posted on all these different chemicals that are commonly used. Find out what they're using and then look up on Beyond Pesticides what those chemicals are and what they're about, and present that to your community leaders and say, look at the neurological damage tiny amounts of these chemicals can do to our kids, our dogs, anyone else. And of course, I'm out selling Contact Organics, which is our new herbicide that really works. It uses technology to desiccate weeds, and it kills weeds oftentimes a lot faster than Roundup. It's pretty amazing. And we're having a lot of success with weeds not coming back to an area, and we get a spread of 6 to 8 weeks between applications, just like Roundup. So it fits in with, workers' schedule for man hours and so on. It gets a job done like the guys in these departments need to have it done, but everybody's safer. And, that could be a start with the weed killer, and then look at the fertilizer and look at all the other inputs, and, one foot in front of the other. But there are consultants too that you can contact. There's a friend of mine, his name is Chip Osborne of Osborne Organics. He's one of the top experts in the nation. But, if you can't reach Chip, then you could ask Beyond Pesticides or non-toxic communities to bring in an expert to help your community. But for me personally, the reason I left my non-toxic communities to sell this product is because consistently I was asked by people, please, is there a good weed killer that's effective but that's safe? And Contact Organics was it. So I'm representing that now, and I'm excited to do so. But start researching and contact non-toxic communities or contact me.
How do they contact you?
They can reach me at, what's my best email? Let's do k.hallal, Hallal, k.hallal at contactorganics.com.
K.Hallal, Hallal at contactorganics.com.
Yes.
So that's great. And when we come back next time or the time after that, I'd like for you to tell some of your stories about how you got, successfully, you got communities and schools to switch and to get off the toxic stuff. How's that?
I'd be happy to. And there are more and more too. I mean, New York's coming online, Philadelphia's coming online, big cities. This is happening. This is possible. And I want to encourage everyone. This is happening. So it's
That
good.
sounds great. Kathleen Hallal, thank you so much for joining me. And thank you to our audience as well.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me, Hart.
I'm going to end the what is it? We'll come back. I'll contact you after this. I think I have to end the meeting, in the Zoom meeting, and do it that way.
Okay.